What's the most unexplainable thing that has happened to you? Story 1. This doesn't exactly rise to an X-Files case, but I have no idea how I got home from a bar one night. I was living on my own and went out with some childhood friends and my brother. The next thing I remember was waking up in my childhood bedroom in my parents' house. My brother and friends were freaking out because they had no idea what happened to me. They didn't really understand what happened. They said I had 2, maybe 3 drinks that got me really drunk, then started making plans to leave when I disappeared. I drove to the bar that night, so they went outside to see if my car was still there, which it was. My parents said 4 guys they had never seen carried me to the door, then helped take me upstairs. My parents knew the people I was out with, including my brother. These were different people. About an hour after I woke up at my parents' house, I got a message from one of the bartenders there I was friendly with. She told me she thought I was drugged. She said I had like 2 or maybe 3 drinks when I suddenly looked like I was blackout drunk. The next thing she knew, 4 guys she didn't know were helping me out the door. The crazy part, though, was the bar, and my apartment, was a solid 45 minutes from my parents' house. I have no idea who the guys were. What, if anything, was given to me. Why something would have been given to me, or how they even knew where my parents lived. I don't believe anything was stolen, nor was I injured in any way. My mom said the guys who took me to the door were normal-looking guys about my age and perfectly polite to her. In the years since that's happened, nobody has said, "Bro, you were wasted that night we took you home." I just have no idea what happened. Story 2. I woke up from a nap, laughing explosively and uncontrollably. It was one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. I couldn't catch my breath, and I rolled onto the floor clutching my chest. I got so scared and ran to my dad, while still laughing. I believe he thought I was joking around, but I sat in the floor, and it slowly stopped. Never happened again. Story 3. Lost my ATM card, went to the bank to have it replaced, told them what I wanted the PIN to be, and they told me that the PIN would be randomly assigned and mailed separately. And once I received both, I could then change the PIN to what I wanted it to be. The randomly assigned PIN was the one that I wanted. Story 4. I have a few. First is when I worked at a grocery store as a teen. Manager called Code G, which was everyone bring their trash to the compactor. The manager was also a family friend, so joking around was normal. As I'm throwing trash away, I sense something's about to be thrown at me and I duck. Rotten food passes over my head. My manager friend is shocked and questioned how I knew he was about to throw something at me, and I just said I had a feeling. Next scenario is saving my grandmother's life. I used to visit her every couple months or so. Wasn't a far drive, 30 minutes. One day I was at Walmart and randomly thought of her. Walmart was about halfway to her house, and I didn't buy perishables, so I figured why not stop and see her. As I pull in her driveway, she's sitting on her front porch. She looks up at me and looks back down. I immediately know something's wrong because she always jumps up to greet me. As I approached, I noticed her lips were blue and started calling 911. Her lungs were 80% filled with fluid and 2 collapsed heart valves. The paramedics told me if I got caught at a red light, she'd probably be dead. This was around 80 years old. She passed away at 95, a year ago. Story 5. About 10 years ago, my brother and I owned and lived in an old 2-story duplex. While watching TV one time, I heard what sounded like something dropping on the floor and then rolling across his living room. I texted him and asked what he dropped. His reply was nothing, but her heard the sound too, and it sounded like I pushed something against the ceiling. There is only about a foot of space between our 2 living rooms. A different time, I was camping with my wife and awoke around 2:30 in the morning with the worst headache imaginable, but it quickly subsided. My brother was planning on meeting up with us later the next day, but called me in the morning to let me know he wasn't feeling well. I told him about my headache and he went silent. He told me he woke up at the same time with a massive headache too. Neither of us are the type to play practical jokes or anything like that. It was weird. Story 6. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. The first patient I ever lost was a 2-year-old girl who we knew would eventually leave us due to multiple medical problems. She passed peacefully at home, where we did all our therapy sessions. She was never not attached to multiple machines that kept her alive, a track, vent, CO2 monitors, so many wires and alarms. A week to the day after her passing, I woke from a dream where I was holding her on my lap. Her mother was next to me and we were playing. She was completely healed. Not a wire in sight. Smiling, talking, she was not able to speak in life, and being a normal 2-year-old. I knew she was okay. I already believed in heaven, but this made me believe I saw her there. Story 7. There was a huge earthquake in San Francisco in the 80s. My dad was there for a conference. We felt the quake where we were, and I suddenly started screaming, "Dad! Dad! Look out for the chandelier!" My mom and Sibs were understandably freaked out. When we finally got a hold of him, he told us that he'd been in a ballroom when the quake hit and had a sudden urge to jump to the side. A chandelier fell right where he was previously standing. My family never talks about it. Freaked everyone out severely. Story 8. So far, cancer. I'm 21. When I was 20, I was diagnosed with bladder cancer. If you know anything about bladder cancer, it is very, very common. In people who are 70 plus. In people my age or younger, it is exceptionally rare. So rare that from all of recorded medical history until 2010, there was only 125 cases worldwide of bladder cancer presenting in a patient 20 and under. Now I can think of a lot to explain why I got cancer. But even my doctor was baffled. It took 7 months to diagnose because all my doctors were like, "There's absolutely no way you have bladder cancer. It's unheard of." Fast forward to the same doctor telling me in all his years as a urologist, and all the thousands and thousands of patients he's seen with bladder cancer, I was the youngest by a long shot. Nobody that came to mind has come close to being as young as I am with the disease. He wants me to take part in genetic testing so I can know to look out for cancer in my children one day, and because the medical field knows so little about bladder cancer at my age, they might learn something from my case. The good news is, in just about every single case of bladder cancer at my age, including myself, it's literally almost always curable, and may even be one of the easiest cancers to beat. During my fight with it, I did a ton of research, and I couldn't find not one case where somebody my age died with it. Not one. It was scary nonetheless, but I'm here about 6 months since my surgery and chemo. I had my 3-month checkup about a month ago, and so far so good. I was told it's unlikely to ever return. Though the most unexplainable thing that's happened to me is getting an extremely rare cancer. Edit. I want to clarify, I am all good. It didn't spread anywhere. They cut all of it out in one go. I am 100% cancer-free. Story 9. This happened just under 6 months ago, but I had intense dreams for about 2 weeks straight of the same man that I had never seen before in my life. And every single instance that I saw him, he was trying to hurt/kill me. Literally every time I slept, he was suffocating me with a bag or slipping something in a drink, finding my house and stalking me, etc. After dreaming about him for 2 weeks or so, I met this man, Arl, at a gas station. We didn't talk to each other. I knew nothing about him, but he was there, and I could immediately tell it was him. I finished pumping my gas and got in my car, and this man came up in front of my car, putting his hands on the hood and just staring at me through the windshield. It was insanely creepy, and I couldn't leave. It was late at night, so there weren't many people nearby, and I just got this horrible gut-wrenching feeling of wanting to puke because something was very wrong. I honked my horn super loud, and he flinched and pulled away from my hood, so I took the opportunity to drive away. I have no idea who he was. I had never seen him before in my life, but for some reason I saw him harming me in my dreams, and I genuinely think that my fight or flight response in that moment and honking at him saved me from whatever he was going to do while camping out in front of my car. Story 10. I had a dream that I was a Japanese boy in a poor fishing town, growing up in the 80s. I worked on the boat with my dad, and we lived in this small house with my sister and mom. I went Thai school, made friends, graduated high school, met a beautiful woman, and became a successful businessman. We had a son together who was 4 years old, and I loved the life I lived. I was in my mid-30s when I woke up. I don't know how my brain dreamed up an entirely different life on its own. Most of my dreams are insane, yet this one felt so normal. I remember how the boat looked, how poor I was, how I eventually got some money and watched technology evolve in front of my eyes. For context, I'm 24, and when I had this dream, I was like 15 of 16. I'm a white guy who's never been to Japan. Story 11. I was still living at my parents' house, and at around 2:30 a.m., our Rottweiler was sitting at the back door barking, wanting to go out to use the bathroom. I threw on a hoodie and sweatpants and walked to the back door where I found her growling, staring out the window. It was a little unnerving, but because of the dog, I felt safe enough to step out with her for a minute or two. As soon as I opened the door, she bolted to the corner of our property. On the side of the lawn, she chose we had one standalone lamppost, providing just enough light to get a rough idea of the landscape. I started making my way over to the dog, thinking that she didn't need to use the bathroom at all and just had the zoomies or something like that. So my plan was to just grab the dog and go back inside. Suddenly, the dog does a complete 180 and hauls ass down our property line in the direction opposite of what I was facing. I turned around to start following her again, and I stopped dead in my tracks. There was this tall and thin white figure levitating probably 5, 6 feet off the ground in our yard. The fear flooded my body instantly. It didn't appear to have any limbs, from what I saw in a panic, and it almost looked like it was moving in the wind. The dog was following it, jumping and barking in an aggressive manner. The adrenaline and fear coursing through my body gave me the strength to sprint over and scoop up this 80 to 90 pounds dog and dead sprint to the back door. I told my family the next morning and they seemed pretty spooked, but they also weren't taking it super seriously. I have no idea what I saw. Story 12. Maybe not that weird, but definitely weirdest thing I ever saw. While hiking in the Olympic Mountains of WA, I saw 2 birds flying very, very slowly, like in super slow motion, and they perched on a branch above my head. Hard to explain how unreal and bizarre it looked, but was right in front of me. There were no updrafts of breezes, no cliff edge nearby. They were flying very slowly, in ways that should defy the laws of physics. They flew off at regular speed. Story 13. Many years ago, during my A-level final exams, I panicked like hell in the lead up to the exam for one subject, because I basically hadn't revised at all, and it was my weakest subject. I had gone through a phase during that school year of slacking off like mad, and it reflected in my grades all year. But realization hit me in the week before this exam that I had severely screwed up. I wouldn't be able to pass, let alone get a good grade. I still can't remember a single thing about the day of the exam. My friends later said I felt a bit off, more quiet than normal, but I cannot recall anything at all about that day. I got an A on that exam. I still don't know how. I still don't have any decent knowledge of that subject. I walked into that exam room, wrote for 2 hours, and got an A. Story 14. This happened 25 years ago, before everyone had access to cell phones and you couldn't find personal information online. Me and my friend were driving when she decided to take a shortcut through an alley. All of a sudden, I heard my cell phone ring, which I had just bought the week before. There was a lot of static noise coming from, and all of a sudden, a woman on the side started telling me, "You need to get out of there, turn around and go the other way." I just look at friend confused when all of a sudden was a man standing in the middle of the alley with a knife on his hands, and my friend panicked and started screaming as she put the car on reversed and got out there. Until these days, I had no clue who called me, or how they knew my number, since I haven't given out to anyone else outside my friend. Story 15. I almost walked into a UFO. 10 years old, walking home from friend's house, turned a corner and bam, UFO. Silver disc about 4 feet off of the ground. Thing was probably 30 feet across, just hovering in my neighbor's yard. It had some purple lighting, but no lights were apparent. I was about a foot from this thing and fell on my ass. Silent. I ran home quite quickly, pants covered in mud. I don't really believe in aliens visiting Earth because science and all but this was a pretty clear data point to the contrary. I'd like to forget this thing as it complicates my inner epistemology concerning the way the universe works, but a bit hard to ignore. Story 16. I was a roofer, highly skilled in the trade. I was loving life, working hard and planning my future. I had just set up a roofing business too. I woke up one morning itching everywhere, looked in the mirror and seemed a bit red. I went to work as usual, thinking the sunburn itches so bad. Following few days, I became slow and drearily, itching like my skin was on fire, as if thousands of bees were stinging me over and over. My skin had become covered with a hard, disgusting rash. Then came the boils all over. After being to my GP and then being sent to a specialist, it turned out I became allergic to the sun. After 28 years of being a normal, outgoing outdoors kind of person, overnight, unknowingly, my life has flipped. No more going out in the daytime without major coverage and special sun cream. I've never been given a proper answer to why this happened to me. This disease, or whatever it's classed as, has ruined my life. I was told to just avoid exposure to the sun. This was so unexpected and unexplainable. I'm in a better place now, 4 years on since it happened, but not one day goes by without me questioning why. Story 17. My daughter and I were standing outside of a shop in a strip mall in a very suburban area. A smartly dressed man in a nice suit was approaching us, and as he did, a squirrel approached as well. Strange place for a squirrel to be. The man smiled at us. We smiled back. The squirrel scurried closer to the man. The man fixed his gaze on the squirrel, and the squirrel scurried faster toward him as he started to panic, and that damn squirrel ran up the man's leg and around his body, and that grown man let out a shriek I'll never forget. My daughter and I just watched in horror as this poor man got assaulted by a crazy-ass squirrel. The squirrel finally took off, and all three of us just stared at each other like, what the fuck just happened here? It was wild. Story 18. Sitting on the couch with my at-the-time girlfriend, stairs to the second floor covered by an adjacent wall. Suddenly, we hear what sounds like someone stomping, running down the stairs. Naturally, I jumped up, assuming someone had broken in, but there was nobody there. We checked every room upstairs, every closet, under every bed. Nothing. We then went on to have a bunch of other weird and unexplained shit happen the 3 years we lived in that house. Here we are at the end of the video. These stories were really crazy. Write your opinion in the comments. Bye.